Pittsburgh Pirates moved on from a few pitchers to get Spencer Horwitz from the Cleveland Guardians. Are more on the move? And why?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast. Have been for 4 years now, and I'm bringing you all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates, from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Tonight's episode of Locked On Pirates on this beautiful Friday evening in Pennsylvania is brought to you by Game Time. If you want to go to a Steelers game before the regular season ends, or maybe get in on some playoff action if they get a home game, or if you want to go see the Penguins hit the ice at PPG Paints Arena, make sure you go to Game Time right now. And when you use code Locked On MLB, you'll get $20 off your first purchase, and tell them that Locked On Pirates sent you. So, yesterday was going to talk about what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about it this evening. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about what the other teams in this division have been up to, because they've been rather busy the last couple of days. But welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in whenever this show does come out. We had some news, obviously, during winter meetings, as such with every other MLB team that has news during winter meetings. It's just customary. All the GMs, all the scouts, everybody within the organization pretty much is at that site. And it was in Dallas this year. Sounded like a lot of fun from a lot of people that were there. For the Pirates, a lot of us, it's appeared that the biggest news that we were going to get out of winter meetings was Dave Parker getting into the Hall, Pirates acquiring Spencer Horwitz, and sorry for my dirty nail here, and the 6th overall pick, which, mind you, folks, if you saw me tweet about that, the last time and only time Pirates ever had the number 6 overall pick in the MLB draft, they selected Barry Bonds in 1985 out of Arizona State. Yeah, that ended up being a pretty damn good pick, if you ask me. We all thought that that would be the biggest news to come out of winter meetings. We thought that that was going to kind of be just the marquee. And what I'm about to talk about is not exactly clear-cut news, just a massive rumor that could end up being massive news, and it would likely be the biggest news of the offseason in a way that I don't think fans would appreciate. But the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, shout out to those guys, by the way, Andrew Destin and Noah Hiles, who were boots on the ground at winter meetings. And they wrote a pretty lengthy piece about what they were hearing at winter meetings, what was going on, what was being talked about, what the Pirates were thinking about doing. And it led off, obviously, with the Spencer Horwitz news. But with that came questions, warranted questions, I would say, about just how much pitching this Pirates team would move on from. And you saw them move on from Josh Hartle, Michael Kennedy, and Luis Ortiz. If you listen to my show on Tuesday, spoiler, I'm okay with that. None of those guys, to me, are guys that you look at and you say, okay, the Pirates can't replace those guys. They absolutely can and will in some capacity. Now you get this report from Andrew and Noah Hiles, who have spoken on it at length, so I'm not going to put words in their mouth at all. I am just going to read from what they said in this Pittsburgh Post-Gazette piece, and I'm going to interpret it how I want to. So let's just make that clear. I'm not saying anything that I don't report. So anything I say is not reporting. Okay? Let's just get that out of the way. But let's just read this and go through it together. I'm sure a lot of you have read it, but we're going to read through it and go through it together. More pitchers on the move is where it starts. The Pirates have been vocal about their willingness to trade pitching for offense, and sources indicate Ortiz was not the only member of last year's starting rotation available to be dealt. Okay, so before we even move forward, you're already, the alarm bells are sounding. The SOS is sounding. You're like, whoa. We're talking about last year's starting rotation. So let's just look at what that was. Paul Skeens, I would assume, is untouchable. Mitch Keller, your opening day starter. Jared Jones, the rest is still unwritten, buddy. Rookie phenom before Skeens, of course. Luis Ortiz, who's now a Cleveland Guardian, and Bailey Falter. Of those names, I think Bailey Falter is the one that jumps out of the off the page for everyone as the name that would move. I think most people would agree with that. You look at that as the name. Then you read further. The Post-Gazette learned Monday the Pirates were open to the idea of trading Mitch Keller. Okay, so let's talk with that for a minute. So when you're discussing Mitch Keller here, and we're going to skip around a little bit in this piece to discuss their what their reporting says. Let's remember this. Last year, they inked Keller, and they say it here, to a 5-year, $77 million contract, the largest in franchise history for a pitcher. So we know that happened. He obviously had a pretty good showing in 2024. He was pretty good. He was worth every penny of that extension. And he did take, I would say, just a tad step back from what we saw the year before when he won the All-Star nod, but still a good year. But let's go ahead and skip a little bit. And again, I said we were going to read through this together. So this is all their words in this piece. The ultimate goal of trading Keller, per sources, would be to trim payroll while also upgrading other areas of the roster. Multiple sources said the club's ideal return would be a young, quality major league bat. Keller's departure would also create more financial flexibility for additional roster moves. So, that's something, I guess, because there's a lot of layers to that. One, you would be moving on from Keller, who's set to make $15.4 million in 2025, 16.9. You get the point. You would be moving on from him to create financial flexibility, as reported here. What that would signal to the fan base, now this isn't particularly the way I think, but what that signals to the fan base, I think, is warranted, is the payroll already isn't that high. So why would we need to trim it to create flexibility for said payroll? That's everybody's biggest question. I know it is. And I understand it is. But I don't think that's the point of this. Now, my initial thoughts on trading Mitch Keller, and I'll just go ahead and say it, this is something that I kind of expected either this offseason or next, with what's on the way, what they have now, what's going to be available to them for this starting rotation. Don't get me wrong. Mitch Keller is a phenomenal pitcher. Phenomenal pitcher. But when you're also considering just who he is as a player, he's not as good as Paul Skeens. He doesn't have the upside of Jared Jones, who we'll get to later. And you're looking at Bubba Chandler, who could potentially be a better pitcher than him. You're starting to wonder, okay, where does he fit in? Where does his contract fit in? So in practice, what you're thinking here is that Mitch Keller, if they do indeed move on from him, would hopefully bring you back a quality, young, as they say, player. For my preference, it would be a corner outfielder. And just off the top of my head, a team that I think you absolutely talk to right now is the Baltimore Orioles. And you think about Heston Kjerstad. That's the kind of thought process you folks need to have here with this. You could potentially be getting a Heston Kjerstad type for a Mitch Keller. That is a very real possibility because the Orioles are a team that needs pitching. A lot of teams need pitching. The Pirates need bats. Now, I'm not saying that I'm okay with moving on from Mitch Keller at this point because I do think he is at least the most consistent pitcher the Pirates have seen, but obviously you stretched out Jared Jones and Paul Skeens last year, so you expect that consistency to come from them, of course. But when you're also considering, and I'm sorry if the camera is lost here. It's back. When you're considering, though, the prospect of trading Mitch Keller, where do the pieces fall in place? I think that's the biggest question we all have, but I'm going to get into that more in a moment because Jared Jones was involved in this too, and that one there is what I find a little puzzling. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com right now for all of your betting needs because you can get ready to take the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. Alrighty, gang, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. After you listen to the show tonight, if you're cuddled up by the fire or drinking a nice glass of whiskey or whatever suits your fancy this holiday season, make sure you also listen to Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He'll be bringing you all of your news, analysis, and opinions on everything going on in the MLB offseason as it pertains to all of you from a broad scope on our flagship show, Locked On MLB. That's with Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call him Sully. So Mitch Keller was just part one of this report that came out from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about potentially moving on from more arms from the starting rotation of 2024, which, let's remind ourselves, was the massive strength of this team and was the biggest reason why this team even was able to stay afloat for as long as it did. So, we talked about Mitch Keller, but I really think the alarm bells started to sound off when you consider Jared Jones. Now, of course, I would not be bringing up Jared Jones's name in a trade piece if it wasn't for the fact that his name was brought up. Again, I didn't do this reporting. I didn't say any of this. I did not allude to any of this. These are guys that get paid to do that. They get paid to find this stuff out. They get paid to outsource and figure all this stuff out. So when I'm adding my thoughts, don't put words in my mouth. Okay? But let's go back to this piece. Jones, meanwhile, would be an entirely different type of move. Viewed by some to be in the upper tier of the game's intriguing young arms. Pause. I agree with that. I do think Jared Jones supplanted himself in the upper tier of young arms in this league. I really do. I think that he did a very good job in doing so. I think that he has the upside that is very, very high. I mean, anywhere he pitches, he has upside to be an ace. He just does. We saw flashes of that all season last year. But continuing, the 23-year-old right-hander would have a much higher price tag due to his potential, his league minimum contract, and multiple years of remaining control. So you're already seeing the divide of what you would be getting if you were to trade Mitch Keller versus trading Jared Jones. You're seeing that already. On the Mitch Keller side, you're shedding a lot of money that can be used elsewhere. You're moving on a veteran, more known commodity starter who has less upside, but also is controllable through the contract. While with Jared Jones, as they say there, he's on the league minimum, just came off a very good rookie season, has loads of potential, and has plenty of control. So you can imagine if you move on from a guy like Jared Jones that you're getting a lot more back for a guy like Jared Jones. And that's what I want to, before we continue here, that's kind of what I want to add is if you're trading these guys away, one or the other, which I don't see him trading both, but one or the other, and I really don't see trading either of them, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do with this coming out now. You're not going to be getting garbage back. I know that as a fan base, we've kind of ingrained it in our minds that any trade we make, we're on the back end of. Any trade we make, we're just not, it's not going to work for the Pirates. It's going to be a dud. It's going to be a fleece, if you will, as social media would say. We've just accustomed ourselves to be conditioned that way. And we can't condition ourselves that way because, folks, Mitch Keller and Jared Jones are very good players. The Pirates are not going to trade very good players for loads of garbage at this point right now. This is not Jamison Tyone. This is not Joe Musgrove. This is not Josh Bell. This is none of that. This is none of the trades that you've seen this team make over the past 4 or 5 years under Ben Cherington. This is none of that. These guys are so far ahead in leaps and bounds over what the Pirates have put out there for availability via trade over the past half decade. So just taking that into account for a second, anything you get back is going to be good. Now, as they said, Jared Jones would obviously bring back a way better package. He would bring back a way better player. He would bring back probably a more established young player with loads of control as well. It'd kind of be like, hey, here's our really good young player with loads of control. Give us your good player with loads of control. That's the kind of mindset you can have here. And the Pirates, on top of that, would probably get more than they would give away if you're trading Jared Jones. Now, Mitch Keller, we'll see. But back to the piece. Word of Jones' availability came to the Post-Gazette's attention Tuesday evening, not long before the Ortiz deal was made, meaning his trade status could have changed with another young right-hander no longer in the picture. So, starting rotation-wise from last year, yes, you're not trading Paul Skeens. That is not happening. Ortiz was the only other young righty in that rotation. Keller's relatively young, but he's far along enough now. But you do have to consider how this team views Bubba Chandler. How does this team view Thomas Harrington, who I believe is a righty? Let me fact check myself here before I look like a moron. Yes, he is. How does this team view Braxton Ashcraft, Mike Burrows, Johan Oviedo? There's a lot to like there with the right-handers that they have at their disposal. So how do they view those guys? And in the same light, where does Jared Jones fit? That's what you're thinking with all this now. Where does Jared Jones, Bubba Chandler, Ashcraft, Skeens, Keller, Falter, Solometto, Burrows, Oviedo, where do they fit here? Because normally you have 5 spots. That's what you got. But you can never have enough depth. I think that's the biggest thing here. So, Cherington comes to say, and I'll just read it all the way through. On Wednesday, following the Rule 5 draft, Cherington was asked if the Pirates are willing to make additional trades involving the Major League pitching staff, to which he provided the following response. Quote, in theory, end quote, Cherington said. Quote, I mean, obviously at some point, you got to be careful. We want to maintain that as a strength, and you go too far, you start to dig into it too much, and all of a sudden, you can get yourself in trouble. So we'll need to be thoughtful and careful about it. Still feels like that's an area of strength and depth. We'll just have to see what comes. We're still interested in adding to the team. We think there's a lot of opportunities to do that. We don't feel like we're in a rush to do that. We'll stay after it, and we got a couple more months to work on it. End quote. So here's just my broad kind of consensus on all this. One, I think a lot of this was overblown by the fan base when it came out. This does not mean that Mitch Keller and Jared Jones will be traded. Just because this came out and that they are available, well, guess what, folks? I'm available to be a boyfriend to somebody. That doesn't mean that I am going to be. That doesn't mean that I am. Same thing goes here. Yes, Ethan is single. Whoop-de-doo. Breaking news. Same thing goes here. Just because Mitch Keller and Jared Jones are very available does not mean in any absolute theory that they go anywhere. They could. They very well can. But it doesn't absolutely mean that they will. So get it out of your head that both of them might be gone. Get it out of your head that the trade package that they get is going to be terrible. Get it out of your head that with the Mitch Keller thing, they'd just be shedding payroll because they don't want to spend money. No, it has something to do with it, but that would also free up $15 to $16 million for this team to really go after and get some stuff. You could kill all the birds you want with one stone if you move on from Mitch Keller, because you're going to get something worthy back that's going to be a major league player. And on top of that, you're going to create a ton of financial flexibility for yourself, financial flexibility for this team. And in theory, folks, it makes sense. I know I don't like it. Truthfully, I don't want to see Keller or Jones get traded. But if it's for the better of this team in the long run, you might do it. And you might have to. Because near at the end of the year, and when we started talking about it early in the offseason, all I heard from you guys and all I heard from the fan base is, we got to trade arms for bats. We got to do it. But now they're trying in practice to do it. They already did once with Luis Ortiz, Michael Kennedy, and Josh Hartle to get Spencer Horwitz. They already did it. And you guys were mad about that. Now they might be doing it again with players that we've just kind of latched ourselves onto like leeches that can't go anywhere. But you're thinking, folks, about Heston Kjerstad, Wilyer Abreu, maybe even a Tristan Casas. Hell, maybe Cody frickin' Bellinger, Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser. Let's throw that name out there. You're not going to be getting scrubs. This isn't a nursing home. You're not going to be getting scrubs, folks. This is not going to be a Grey's Anatomy trade. How many scrubs jokes can I make? I'm amped about this because, yes, I would be a little upset if they trade Mitch Keller and Jared Jones because I like them as players. I do. They've already contributed to this team a lot, and if they stay, I'll be happy. If they go and the Pirates bring in stuff to make the team better, guess what? I'll be happy. Because at the end of the day, that is what matters. This team getting better, and that's what we all want. But don't jump to conclusions because of a report that came out on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that said 2 guys are available, because just because they are available doesn't mean that they are getting traded. Period. But if they do, don't immediately say that the trade is garbage. Sit back, get a glass or a can or whatever you drink. Calm down. Take it easy. Everything will be fine. I promise. Because this team has some real goals, real aspirations, and God forbid I say a plan. Let's just see it in practice. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply because Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks allows you to curate and make it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can toggle the all-in pricing feature to show you your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off and download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Alrighty, folks, and hopefully my connection has allowed you to at least hear me go crazy about all this on YouTube and all of your audio platforms. Yeah, just calm down a little bit. Everything's going to be fine. The world isn't ending. The Pirates aren't going to be absolutely horrible if they do these things. It's all going to be fine. Hopefully. As far as pitching is concerned, though, we did get a coaching change. A fun one, I'd add, as Miguel Perez was named the team's bullpen coach today around about 4 Eastern time. Very cool for him. This bullpen of large focus going into 2025 after a horrible year from that group. Obviously move on from the pitching coach, the bullpen coach, I might add. And of course, you moved on from Andy Haynes. So coaching changes, of course, were bound to happen eventually. They do make one in here, though, and it's an in-house hire. You look at Miguel Perez, been with the Pirates for a very long time. Very long time. Been with them for, I think almost 20 years at this point. Obviously spent the last 3 as a manager of the team in Indianapolis with the Indianapolis Indians. So there's going to be some familiarity, obviously, with a lot of these pitchers in the bullpen that we've seen go through the pipeline a little bit, like a Braxton Ashcraft, like a Kyle Nicholas, like a potentially even a Johan Oviedo as a long reliever. He has had his hands on these guys before. He's been face-to-face with them. He's worked with them before. So I do like this move a lot because it keeps the familiarity aspect there with these guys. And I think, honestly, it's going to inject a little bit of life into this bullpen, seeing a guy who's been in the organization for a very long time. Added, he was with the organization the last time this team was in the postseason. So that kind of just injects positivity into that group. And on top of that, he comes with a pretty good track record. I mean, he's only 41 years of age. And yeah, I mean, you look at what has been said about him. Miggy is one of the most highly respected members of our player development system who has not only had a meaningful impact on our players, but also other managers and coaches throughout the organization. Derek Shelton said that to Fox Sports. His passion for the organization, along with all the other intangibles that he will bring to our staff and players, is something that we are excited about at the big league level. So yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason to have an issue with that move whatsoever. I just think it'll only help the bullpen, which I think a lot of you are still wanting to add to, as I do as well. You've already seen them kind of add somebody from the Miami Marlins, but that's going to be a 2-way deal, so we'll kind of see what goes on there. I'm expecting a decent jump from Kyle Nicholas. I'm expecting a bounce back from David Bednar and Colin Holderman. Dennis Santana, I think, can still fully be a part of this group as well. That's another thing you can expect. But, again, don't forget tomorrow, folks, we're going to be talking about what our rivals are doing in this offseason, because over the past couple of days, they've gotten very, very busy, in particular today. I want to let it simmer a little bit, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow on Locked On Pirates. Thank you for listening to the show on YouTube or any of your audio platforms. Please like, subscribe, comment, and turn on your notification bell so you know when Locked On Pirates is in your feeds. My name is Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Have a wonderful Friday evening. We'll see you at noon tomorrow. But until then, we'll see you on the flip side.